Hey everyone, it's your favorite educator. And yeah, today I wanted to talk about how I feel education saved my life. It still even feels weird calling myself an educator, but I guess that's kind of what I do on this channel to one extent or another. And like I recently did an interview with a magazine where they called me a scholar still, and I'm still just so uncomfortable with that because, like, yes, I have a master's degree and everything like that, but, like, I don't have any significant publications or anything like that. I'm not well known, and, like, yeah, but this story is gonna be um like um it's gonna be one which is focused around my dad and my I I have like I have like two half brothers, but this is gonna be about my dad and my one full brother. Um because they're essential to this story, and it's once again the story of how they, through their stressing of education to me, helped lead me on the right path, and I feel like they honestly saved my life, not gonna lie. um and yeah, guys, I mean, what can I say? I've kind of briefly touched on this before, but like, my dad um came from an upper middle class Guatemalan family. Um, his parents, my grandparents, um, my grandfather was an economist and accountant, and he was like on the board of Hitachi of Central America. I think he was one of the first to help introduce Hitachi products into the Central American region. Like, because there are photos of him in Taiwan. I'm pretty sure at the Bay of Kyoto and stuff like that with Japanese people from Hitachi, and he was also uh, a colonel eventually posthumously in the Guatemalan military that took part in the defense of the Arbenz regime in 1954. Um, and consul to Costa Rica and Guatemala. Uh, and then my grandmother, her parents, her father specifically, also an economist and accountant, but he actually ran, like, he was the head of Guatemala's central bank during the 1940s. Um, I'll tell a little bit more of that story in another video down the road. I don't know exactly when, but I do want to do that eventually once I get all the facts straight. Um, but yeah, and I mean, my great grandmother was like, she was a criolla. She was fully Spanish. And apparently, like, She was one of the first women in Guatemala to drive a race car or something like that, or to actively participate in racing. Uh, so I'm told. So I'm told. I don't know if that's actually true or not. The other stuff I've been able to verify, but that I haven't. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like my dad, grew up like any upper middle class to lower upper class kid, uh basically with some of the best opportunities of all time, um going to some of the best schools from primary to post secondary, um and just with access to a lot of stuff. Like I think he went to Liceo Guatemala, which is a pretty good school, so I'm told. I mean, it's not like, I think La Escuela Maya is like the technically the best school in Guatemala, and that's like literally only reserved for diplomats and their kids and stuff like that. And at this point, my dad is in his 70s, but at this point my grandfather was not yet involved that much in diplomacy. He was more into like military matters and economics and stuff still. Um and so yeah, I just like, despite my growing up poor, when we eventually moved to the US, right? Because my parents had to become migrant laborers. Um, I I just got so lucky because, and yes, the internet was around back then and we had it, but we had it intermittently. And, oh, if I wanted to ask my dad a question, I could do it and be reasonably sure he was right. I would go to school the next day and go to the library and get out an encyclopedia and check him and stuff, or like just read during library time at school. And I also had a library close by to our house, thankfully, that we could just walk to, and we did a lot before we had regular internet access at our house. And yeah, I mean, come to find out that it was because my dad, after he dropped out of college and before he had his cleaning supplies factory, he actually, no one is truly a self made man, and obviously my dad wasn't because of the initial conditions of his birth. But, like, come to find out, he made a lot of his money to begin with from being an encyclopedia salesman for Grolier, bro. And he was one of the largest distributors of Grolier products in Guatemala and Central America, I believe, and he started door to door. And it's like, when he told me that just recently, like everything started clicking, and like my point is that like education was very important to him, and my mom too, but my mom kind of came from a more a little bit more of an underprivileged background. Not too much, but she was from Chiquimula and didn't have access to that many resources even when she moved to the city because um she was already a teenager at that point and you have to get that stuff early. But yeah, so my dad was literally selling world books and stuff like that in the New Youth Encyclopedia. I think in Spanish it's a Nuevo Tesoro de la Juventud. And yeah, so it's like so and again, even though we were poor, my dad always made sure that we had educational material, that we were watching mostly educational stuff. Um, One of the ones that I remember and where I was initially introduced to algebra alongside my brother is Algebra Baldor, which is this very famous textbook in the Spanish language by a Cuban, I think Aurelio Baldor. And yeah, man. And also the McGraw Hill Demystified series. They had, because here's the thing, bro. Here's where my brother Gonzalo. Shout out to him, to my brother Gonzalo too. Not just my dad, but guys, my brother Gonzalo is a genius. He's a genius, guys. He went to Harvard. He got a full ride scholarship. He's been all this stuff for the Latino community. He's published a book. Um and he's currently studying for a master's in mechanical engineering. Like father, like son. But um he also was he was really good at math, bro. He was doing calculus and differential equations at around 10 and 11 years old, bro. And it was thanks to these books. And so I remember in our living room in our tiny apartment in Pasco County, Florida. Shout out to Pasco County. uh and not the nice places in Pasco, by the way. We're talking the sketchy places in Pasco. But my dad got him a whiteboard that was directly above a little desk with markers and stuff like that. And I remember when we were kids, he would just spend hours upon hours solving differential equations. An 11-year-old, guys. This is why it's important to do whatever we can as a society to lift these underprivileged groups up like this, bro. This is why systemic discrimination is a thing. I've lived it. Now my brother overcame, but imagine if he had been like Terrence Tao, where both his parents were professional working parents that were able to like get him even more resources, not just like the $20 book on relativity or whatever, but it's like, as an insecure disabled person, there were two general reactions which I had to seeing my brother like that. One was inspiration, and two was jealousy. Um, Now, number one, I mean, I saw all this and I wanted to be like him, and I noticed how people underestimated me because of my disability. And so, you know, I started unsuccessfully, but still, with the full intention of like eventually getting to his level. That's where the jealousy came in, right? I wanted to be just like him instead of being me. But I do have to be honest, it planted the first seeds of like, wow, like, wow, this is a real. These things are good for me. I like learning. I like to know things about the world and um yeah, it was very, aside from the jealousy, which obviously as I got older I started to like deal with that and not care about that. But yeah, as a younger person, I honestly did believe that like I was never acknowledged as much, because a lot of the reason why was because I was in a chair. But even then, like, like, the bottom line is that I'm just not as smart, and at that time I wasn't okay with that. But I am now, and like, I gas my brother up. I love my brother, and he's, my inspiration. That inspiration always remained. That competition always remained, even as he went through IB and stuff like that, uh, and yeah, I just always wanted to one up him and wanted to be smart. Now, I wasn't as dedicated as he was, but even when I was being lazy, like when I stopped doing my homework around 8th grade and continued that for a while, usually I was watching Khan Academy or like, getting my own stuff up. During that time, I actually, um, as my brother liked to call it, got into double advanced math. I did pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry, and by my freshman year, or no, my sophomore year, I was already 2 years ahead in math, just like my brother was at that time. Now, he went on to IB and eclipsed me again. I never did IB because I was too lazy. Not because I wasn't smart enough. I think I could have done IB as well, but I was just too lazy. Uh, um, but yeah, I mean, by the time I was in 10th grade, guys, I was doing pre-calculus, and by the time I was in 11th grade, I was doing calculus 3, um, and stuff, and like, thanks to him. But during that time, I also got into philosophy again, thanks to him. And he also, like, I was originally the one to be interested in classical music and stuff. In fact, this is one of the few things that I showed him. Uh, and but he just kept showing me, bro. He showed me Don Giovanni. He showed me um the magic flute and stuff like that on my days. I think Debussy I discovered on my own, but just so much again. Excuse me, great culture, and it's like, you know what? I couldn't have done it. I wouldn't be where I am without him and my dad. I just it wouldn't be a thing for me at all. Uh and most importantly, it kept me out of the bad environment that I was in and him. Like, I know there are lots of critiques of education, especially the education system, but in all honesty, like, in terms of what it can do for underprivileged poor people, like, cause I mean, I was a poor migrant, bro. It's unbelievable. I know that's sort of, I guess, trite. I guess, like, oh well, that's just something they sell you. Usually the people that say that are the people already born into enough privilege to where that wasn't their way out. And in my case, it's a little bit more complicated because the draconian healthcare system makes it so that I kind of have to be without a job or lose necessary medical care, but still, like, education, the arts, the humanities, academics has kept me out of a lot of trouble. And, like, I feel like it saved me, even if it all is ultimately all just vanity. Like, a certain king over Jerusalem said, and he's definitely right? Because I'm still gonna pass away, guys, and so are you, but, like, I mean, it's better than being out there on the street. Not that I have anything against people that are out on the street, for sure I don't, but, like, things could have gone a lot worse had I not had that strong educational foundation. Anyway, guys, see you.